It's not just right-wing extremists who are becoming more misogynistic. It's our culture as a whole, and it's starting to lead to some very scary outcomes for women. A couple of days ago, the New York Times felt comfortable enough to publish an article titled, "Did Women Ruin the Workplace?"
Masculinity is a disease. Femininity is the antidote.
What is toxic femininity?
Gossiping, inability to deal with conflict directly, and just kind of suppressing conflict and aversion to directness, which naturally in a workplace is a big problem.
I cannot find one characteristic or trait that I can ascribe to masculinity, that I can ascribe to most men and not most women. Not one positive characteristic or trait. If you can, put it in the comments.
And in this podcast, she talks about some key things that she sees as problematic in our modern day workplaces, specifically because of women. One argument she makes is that feminization is the cause of what she calls wokeness.
Look, man, I know I'm not a woman, clearly, but I get really upset when I hear or see women or whatever doing things that in my mind, I'm just like, this is stupid, right? Like, as a woman, this just isn't true, correct? But yet there they are doing the thing. I get really upset. And I realize, because being in these spaces, being, whatever you want to call me, a leftist or whatever, you realize that all of these things are the same, right? Essentially, they're all the same. All these systems of oppression, they're all the same. So the same way that I get upset when I see Black people doing, like, saying and, being what we would call coons, when I see Black people being the C word, I'm like, a woman doing that, I don't, you know what I mean? Like, pick me or whatever, that's what they would call it. Like, that's like the female version of the C word for Black people. I'm just like, ugh, like, why are you doing that? And I get so enraged. I'm at a place, it's so funny because I was watching the video earlier with my wife, and I was like so turned off. Like, I was like, ugh, what is she talking about? I was like, I can't even listen to her. I'm so agitated by it. I'm so agitated by it. And I think that's a good thing, because it's proof that it doesn't matter that I'm a man. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter that I'm a man. It doesn't matter that I'm male. It doesn't matter that I'm Black. Like, the only thing that matters is that I understand these systems of oppression and the side that I'm on. You know what I mean? My brand of politics, whatever you want to say. And when you say things that to me go against, for lack of a better term, my brand of politics or what I believe to be true, I am going to have a visceral reaction, especially when it's the group of people that are being harmed by the things that they're espousing. Like, I don't want to hear a mouse talking about how friendly snakes are. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to hear a gazelle talking about not all lions. I don't want to hear that. So I don't want to hear Black people talking about, oh, well, not all white people. And I don't want to hear women talking about not all men. And I don't want to hear women blaming women for the problems that men have created. It's fucking annoying. It's annoying. It's annoying. And lastly, another reason why it's so annoying to me is because, again, I know that all of these systems are connected. All of these systems are connected, right? So racism, misogyny, capitalism, all these systems are connected. Imperialism, all these institutions are connected. All these ideologies are connected, right? So even though this is a white woman saying this, as a Black man, I am like mortified. I'm like, what? Because she belongs to the oppressed class. This is what I was saying this in another video, like, about white women specifically, but this isn't about white women, but this particular part. I'm like, hey, white women, come join us. Come join us in the fight. Abandon cishet white men. They don't like you. Come join abandon your whiteness. Come join us, right? Come get with us. We're good over here. We got you, you know. So when I hear like white women doing this, even though she's a white woman, I'm like, ugh. Like it doesn't matter because it's all connected. Because I know that as long as women, if they're whoever group of women I'm saying, are still fucking fighting with, the patriarchy, not against it, fighting for the patriarchy and not against it, it's gonna hurt me. It's gonna hurt my black ass. So I'm like, nah. Oh my God. I get so annoyed. It really is crazy. Like I am very much like annoyed by this whole conversation. But I'm glad it was had. Definitely. It needed to be had. We needed a spotlight on it.
It's not just right-wing extremists who are becoming more misogynistic. It's our culture as a whole, and it's starting to lead to some very scary outcomes for women. A couple of days ago, the New York Times felt comfortable enough to publish an article titled, "Did Women Ruin the Workplace?" And these regressive ideas are prevalent enough that they're trickling down to the next generation, with a new poll showing that a third of boys think women's rights are unimportant. And the ramifications here go far beyond just the workplace, with a study showing that 40% of young men fail to recognize behaviors such as hitting, punching, or restraining their partner as domestic violence. To be clear, this is a new phenomenon. When they surveyed older men, they were able to identify these behaviors as abusive. After receiving pushback, the Times ended up changing the title of the opinion piece from "Did Women Ruin the Workplace?" to "Did Liberal Feminism Ruin the Workplace?" But they didn't change the content at all. I just think we do ourselves a disservice when we talk about this solely as a Republican problem, because statistics are showing and cultural things like this are demonstrating that across the board, these regressive ideas are becoming more popular and acceptable.
So if that doesn't right off the bat, like my antenna were like, what the hell is this? I expect this from the New York Times, by the way. This is not, I know a lot of people think the New York Times is like a liberal rag, but it's not. They've been, every now and again, something will slip through where you're like, oh, that's interesting. But yeah, for the most part, they know who pays the bills and keeps their lights on. But so that was interesting, right? I'm like, damn, that's frustrating. I don't like hearing that. I don't like hearing about that, especially about the little boys. I read something the other day that was talking about how like little boys don't think that the gender pay gap is like real, or they don't care. No, they don't care about it. Not that they don't think it's real. They don't care about it. Like they don't think that women should be paid, even when women do the same amount of work and do the same job as men, they shouldn't be paid the same amount. That's different because remember, that was their whole thing. When you talk about the gender pay gap, they'd be like, oh, because women don't choose those fields and women don't work as hard as men. And then they ask the little boys like, okay, so if a woman works just as many hours at the exact same job, should she be paid the same amount? And the little boys are like, nah, no, like not most of them, but almost half. That's nuts. That's crazy. So the article was kind of written based on this conversation that was had. And you guys can go watch it. It's on it's free. There's no firewall, there's no paywall, I should say. It's on NewYorkTimes.com. I was watching it. I haven't finished it yet, but it's like an hour long and I had to get ready to do this stuff. So I haven't had a chance to watch it all the way through. So I got some clips just to give us an idea. But yeah, if you guys want to be upset, like watch it. It's very upsetting. You're gonna wish you were there to have the conversation with this woman. Like she is like pearly things. Think pearly things. Like that's pretty much the vibe I'm getting from her. Not as far right wing, but like, yeah, definitely in the same vein though.
What is toxic femininity?
Gossiping, inability to deal with conflict directly, and kind of suppressing conflict and aversion to directness, which naturally in a workplace is a big problem because you need to be able to give direct feedback to people, including negative feedback. I think
so. He asked her the question like, "What is an example of toxic femininity?" That's an oxymoronic phrase. Femininity can never be toxic. I just want you guys to know that femininity is not. I mean, not to say it can't be toxic, but again, because I've had this conversation so many times, and I think I have a pretty good understanding of femininity and masculinity, and I remove all the bullshit and all the fluff around what these concepts were meant to do. I don't care about what people think they are, what they are meant to do, the way in which they're meant to control us, right? Masculinity is, masculinity and femininity are just attributes or traits that you could commonly ascribe to a certain gender or whatever the case may be. Masculinity for men, femininity for women. Fine, we get that. And I've said this a million times, but there are two ways to look at this: how you want men to act, how you expect men to act, right? Versus how men actually act. I don't care about the former. I care about the latter. I don't give a fuck about what we think men should act like. I really don't. I really don't, because you can tell me men should protect, but then societally, we live in a fucking rape culture where men do everything but protect. We pray. You can tell me men are supposed to provide, but we live in a society where men only want to make money so that they can control the people around them. You know what I mean? Like, so I don't care about what men are supposed to be like. You can tell men to practice stoicism, to remain calm so that they can be better, so that they could like not get caught up in their emotions and make rational decisions. But but ultimately what society teaches men is to repress all their feelings and emotions until they get to the point to where they can't keep them up, can't keep them bottled up anymore, and they explode. And then we rationalize that and we say boys will be boys and men are men. And what do you expect? And all of that stuff, right? So I don't care about what men are supposed to act like. I care about how we act. That is the part that I want to talk about. That's the real masculinity unmasked. The first masculinity is the masked version of masculinity. I want to talk about the unmasked version of masculinity. And masculinity is pure negativity. It is pure negativity. I cannot name one attribute, not one. I'm not being hyperbolic. I don't feel like I'm bashing men or anything like that. I genuinely mean this. I cannot find one characteristic or trait that I can ascribe to masculinity, that I can ascribe to most men and not most women. Not one. Not one positive characteristic or trait. If you can, put it in the comments. Standalone, 100% positive trait, not strength. Strength isn't a positive trait. Just because somebody is strong doesn't mean they're going to do good with that strength. Thanos was the strongest motherfucker in the galaxy. Doesn't mean he's going to be a good guy, right? Strength means nothing. Integrity is everything. Integrity in and of itself is a good thing. Nurturing in and of itself is a good thing. By the way, these are two things that I would apply to women: integrity and nurturing. And on the flip side, I can't think of one negative characteristic that I can ascribe to women that isn't connected to men, that isn't connected to the behaviors of men, right? There's not one thing that women do, generally speaking, that most women do that is harmful to women or men or whatever, that cannot be connected to the behaviors of men or connected to being socialized by the patriarchy. Not one fucking thing. Not one thing. So masculinity is all bad. I'm not being hyperbolic. I'm saying this like this is what I figured out about masculinity and femininity. Masculinity is a disease. Femininity is the antidote. Period. Everything about masculinity is bad. Everything about femininity is the answer. It's to fix the masculinity. You need women to be nurturing because men aren't. Then they call it, they excuse it and say other things, or we're providers, or as if one cancels out the other. But at the end of the day, everything about a man, like, oh, a man is strong and a woman is soft, to allow a man to dominate her. Like and to like calm him down when he's angry. Her softness calms him down. Things of that nature. That is how we look at masculinity and femininity. All bad, all versus all good, night and day. I promise you, if you just think about it, if you disagree, I really want you to think about it. I promise you, I'm not like, this is not about men and women necessarily. I'm saying the concepts. Masculinity was made to be bad, and it was made to excuse all the terrible behaviors of men. That's what I'm saying.
Negative feedback.
I think some of what you're describing is not exclusively feminine, and it's strange to characterize it so strongly in that direction. It's a product of human beings being bad at group dynamics in a variety of ways that men can fail at, women can fail at. And it happens in male-dominated places too, where they're explicitly doing truth-seeking, because it's very hard as a discipline to value the truth more than your own pride. We say sometimes that pride can be, I think, a masculine vice as well as a feminine vice. And both men and women have trouble loving the truth more than they love their image of someone themselves as someone who already knew it.
Is that the primary thing that you think is lost in institutions that undergo what you're calling feminization? The failure to seek truth?
I think that's right. And I think that's why the harms or perils of feminization have to be examined on a case-by-case basis for each institution and discipline. I think something like 80% of veterinary students are women today.
Are they doing a bad job at treating the
Are
pets?
you worried? Yeah, are you
Do
worried?
you predict they are, right?
See, as far as I know, this has not had catastrophic effects.
Why?
Well, actually, Claudia Goldin, the Nobel Prize-winning economist, notes in her book that male veterinarians are more likely to own their own practices, whereas female veterinarians prefer not to because being an owner involves more financial risk and longer and less flexible hours. So the shift from a male-dominated profession to a female-dominated profession in the area of veterinary medicine has led to corporatization, that we've gone from a world where most veterinarians own their own practices to one where most veterinary practices are owned by private equity, which is not.
That is a wild take. How are you trying to blame women for that? Think about that. Okay, I'm just going to give you a quick rundown of why that doesn't make sense. To try to act like that has something to do with women. So could it be that even female veterinarians still have families, that they still have husbands, they still have children that they have to take care of, because they don't get to just be veterinarians. Men get to just be veterinarians. So men can take more risks. Men can, spend more time on the job and all of that stuff. And men are more likely to take the risk because a lot of men are, we're not the smartest or whatever, right? So, and we know that women are way more calculated and they're way less, they're adverse. They don't like taking risks, right? They don't like taking unnecessary risks. So it makes perfect sense that women would prefer to just work for like Petco or whatever, right? Or PetSmart or whatever the case may be. That's what I remember taking my dog there this year to PetSmart. They have veterinarians there. I didn't even know that, but they have vets there. Cool. That makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense that they would want to do that, because they're like, yeah, that vet closes at whatever o'clock, they're from here to there, and there's no risk. They literally they don't have to take their work home with them. They don't got to worry about the books. They don't have to worry about hiring people. They get to go to work. They make less money, but the work-life balance is most important to them, because women are smart, because women take into account everybody around them. That's why they're more logical than men, because they take the emotional aspect into account where men won't. Where men will just be like, a man that's a male veterinarian will just be like, yeah, I have a wife and kids, but I need to own my own business because I have a wife and kids. I have a wife at home. She'll take care of everything. So I don't need to worry about that. But a female veterinarian more than likely is like, no. I have a family, or I want a family, and I have people to take care of. And also, even if that's not the case, I still want time for me. I still have to be human. I still have to foster healthy relationships with the people in my community, and so on and so on. So yeah, that makes sense that women would be less likely to do that. And also just the whole, even getting loans. We can talk about how women are systematically kept out of getting loans for businesses and all of that stuff. Like, right on the flip side of that too, like as if to say women don't want to do it at all is crazy, right? But anyways, yeah, this is terrible.
Not been entirely without problems for the pets and farm animals of America. But I am willing to state that, corporatization aside, the feminization of veterinary medicine has not led to the collapse of society and is unlikely to do so. I think it's basically fine.
What's the protective element there? Or what can be learned from veterinary medicine to take into white collar work, right? It just seems odd that you're describing this general dynamic that women, you say, would undermine completely the rule of law. that will lose the rule of law in our lifetimes when women become a majority of lawyers. If it's that stark in law, I'd expect, if your claim is true, some erosion in veterinary medicine or pharmacy, which is also dominated by women and where you can track the failures because people die.
Yeah, it was a lot of that going on from what I saw so far. That the other lady was just like, whoosh, like whipping her, and even the guy, I don't know, I forgot his name, but even he was getting annoyed with this lady because she just like wouldn't be quiet at times. Listening to, I mean, this is like my lives. I promise you, it's like the same thing. It's just between you. Usually, it's between me and a man, but it's just like I said before. It's just demoralizing to listen to a woman talk like this. I'm just like, why? Like, why? You know, and this is my something that that I've had to unpack, and my wife knows this about me. Like again, like I generally just think women are like really smart. So I'm like when I see like a not intelligent woman, I'm oftentimes like what? You know what I mean? I'm like, why are you like? Where did this come from? Why are you? What the fuck? Where were you raised? You know, my mind can't even handle it. But yeah, I'm getting better with that. Trust me. And you know what? It's not even intelligence. It's when I see a woman that doesn't have integrity. I think I'm just so used to seeing women have so much integrity, like woman after woman after woman having a boatload of integrity that when you meet one that doesn't or has very little, you're just like, I wonder what happened to her. Right.
Just 2 days after Virginia and New Jersey elected women as governors, bringing the tally up to 14 now women governors, which is the most we've had in this country at any given time, the New York Times ran this. They pretty quickly changed the title to this, replacing women with liberal feminism. So, as a woman who is a liberal feminist who studies gender, my recommendation is that you not read this article unless you really want to be frustrated, but I'll give you some highlights. This is the transcript of a podcast Ross Douthat did with two conservative women who have actually pretty different ideas about what's wrong with liberal feminism. One of the women, Leah Sargent, seems to make one main argument, at least in this podcast, which is that women working is against our nature and that's in large part because it forces us to delay marriage and delay childbearing, which is what she sees as our inherent nature. The more provocative, or you might even say wacky things in this podcast come from the other guest, a woman named Helen Andrews, who's the former managing editor of the Washington Examiner. She makes a lot of arguments that I don't think are in alignment with reality. For example, she talks about an essay that she's published called The Great Feminization. I did also read that essay. Again, I would not recommend unless you would like to be very frustrated. But in that essay and in this podcast, she talks about some key things that she sees as problematic in our modern day workplaces, specifically because of women. One argument she makes is that feminization is the cause of what she calls wokeness. It's hard to know exactly what she means by wokeness, but an example that she gives is around the Me Too movement and this idea she has that the Me Too movement made it such that everyone was forced to believe all women. And I don't know if she's heard of people like Amber Heard, for example, but that argument does not hold water. She also seems to interpret wokeness as shutting down conversations, and I'm not sure if she knows who's behind book bans. She also seems to have some sense that masculinity is like outlawed in workplaces. As a woman surgeon who's worked in a very obviously male dominated profession for my entire career, I don't understand how anyone who has worked in the real world could come to that conclusion. She actually argues that the only reason there are so many women in professions like medicine and the law is because anti-discrimination laws have, as she puts it, put a thumb on the scale, making it such that women who at some point she suggests are not qualified are getting access to spaces because of anti-discrimination laws specifically. She also argues both in terms of anti-discrimination in general and specifically with regard to Title IX that men are essentially not being treated fairly in our workplaces. As someone who until very recently was funded by the NIH to study sexual harassment, as someone who teaches a course on campus sexual assault, as someone who has actually worked in the real world for many years now, I genuinely cannot wrap my head around this argument. In fact, she implies specifically that Title IX cases are somehow heavily biased toward the survivors who bring them, when famously, anyone who actually studies Title IX has seen and talks about how Title IX repeatedly fails survivors. And if this woman were just saying all of this in her essay in some lesser known outlet and not being interviewed for a New York Times podcast, we would not be sitting here talking about it. But as I have mentioned on my podcast with my colleague, Dr. Alyssa Burgart, views like this that used to be fringe, used to not get airtime in the so-called paper of record, are now continuing to become more and more mainstream. And you can tell how far these arguments are from reality when Ross Douthat is the one who is the closest thing to a voice of reason in this conversation. He multiple times tries to push back against what's being said to him, like when Helen Andrews suggests that women aren't suited for the workplace because what we do is gossip and we avoid confrontation. And in fact, the feminization of workplaces undermines the rule of law. And she also argues multiple times that women undermine the seeking of truth, essentially. And Ross says, okay, but don't we have lots of examples in history of regimes and organizations led by men who were also not truthful and did not present an accurate view of?
That is pretty much a solely male dominated thing. Like, yeah, women can be a part of it. Usually it's connected to men, but women don't mind the truth. Like, they don't mind, you know what I'm saying? Like, women don't mind the truth. And you have to think that the oppressed class of people typically want the truth to come out. The oppressed class of people don't want to hide the truth. They want the truth to come out. The oppressors don't want the truth to come out. So women being like anti-truth just flies in the face of logic. It doesn't make any sense.
What they had experienced or what had happened. Another example of this is when I believe it was Leah Sargent who suggested that women don't really want to work and it's against our nature to work. And Ross said, but women choose to repeatedly. Many women are choosing to, and many women are choosing to place careers above family. So doesn't that go against your argument? For me, as someone who spends a lot of time thinking about,
and they're happier. Like, a lot of these women are happier than women who didn't choose to put their careers. I don't like saying put their careers first. I don't know why I just don't even like that phrase, but people, it's not putting their careers first. People are just like, I don't want to have babies. Like, that's really all it is. It's like, do you want to have children or not? And a lot of women are like, no, I'd rather not have babies. And everybody has to work. So it's not like they're like, I'm putting my career first. They're just like, I just don't want to have babies for various reasons. I don't want to mess up my body. I don't want to mess with my mental health. I don't want to mess with my money. I don't want to mess with my career. I don't, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to be tied to a man, so on and so on and so on. Like, there's tons of reasons not to have kids.
about these issues, it was somewhat interesting to read from an academic perspective what the modern arguments are against women in the workplace. And I think we all would have been better off without giving a platform to these regressive views in a time when one of our two parties is actively trying to roll back women's rights, with multiple people this week talking about repealing the 19th Amendment because so many women voted for Democratic candidates in the election on Tuesday.
Women are they're an asset to the workforce. They're an asset to the workforce. They like if you look up studies, when, like, let me put it like this. When there are all men working somewhere, there's a decline in productivity, there's an uptick in, injuries, whatever, on the job, right? When there's all women there, there's, it's not as good. The best scenario is when men and women work together, like, for productivity and for like the overall health of the individuals in the workforce. Like, they're less likely to get injured and they're more likely to be productive. And they come up with better ideas. Like, when men and women come together, we come up with better ideas. I'm sure in other ways that, because men harass women and, and all that stuff. But But overall, it's women are a fucking huge benefit, and men harassing women wouldn't be the fault of women. But I'm just saying, if you added in that dynamic, then okay, you could say like, all right, it might be a negative specifically for the women. But overall, like for the company and for overall for the people that work there, it's a benefit, women being on the job site.